Hello, guys. Welcome to this new edition of Mind Podcast. This is Aadit Kapadia, and together with me today as my guest is a good friend of Mind Makers, and director of VMR, and psephologist, analyst, Jai Mrug. Hi, Jai.
Hi,
Welcome to Mind Podcast again.
hi. Adit, great pleasure catching up with you again.
Absolutely.
I really expect to enjoy the next 45 minutes or an hour. It's going to be fun. For me, it's a refreshing Saturday evening.
Absolutely. For us, Saturday morning on this side of the world. But
Yeah.
what a insanely complicated political few months for India. For our viewers and listeners, we're going to talk a little bit about Punjab elections, Uttarakhand elections, little bit about UP, and that's going to be the focus of the podcast. Like I said a couple of weeks ago when we did an in-depth on UP, that we'll do an in-depth on Punjab and Uttarakhand, and then but we cannot not leave without talking about UP. So this is where Jay and I were going to basically discuss the issues, the numbers, and Jay's going to tell us everything about who won the election or who will win the election. And of course, we'll try to keep it very secret till the results actually come. So, but jokes apart, Jay, what do you think? Is this the closest election we've seen in Punjab for a long time? And when it comes to, or is this people just trying to be wishful thinkers? And Uttarakhand has always been close. Last time was one of those strange elections which was not close. So how do you think Uttarakhand will
Okay, I'll start with Punjab, which you put first.
go?
I think in Punjab, it's not going to be as close as people think.
Hmm,
Hung and I was just looking at the numbers. You see, even if it becomes something like a three-way contest, Akalis on one side, Congress with Mr. Chani on the other side,
hmm,
and in a three-way contest, Adit, even if you have 34% of the votes, you can form a government with a comfortable majority.
hmm, hmm,
Yeah, now, Aam Aadmi starts with a base of something like 24% from last time.
hmm.
Yeah. So I think 34 is not a tall order,
Yeah,
right? And a three-way contest also means a little above 32, 34, and you're comfortably rolling into a majority.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
I'm looking at the numbers. I perhaps say if people on the ground say Aam Aadmi Party is a front runner, I would as well say okay, it's on the way to form the government. I mean, whoever it is, I'm not seeing a hung scenario precisely because of the three-way nature of the contest. I
So
mean, rather it the BJP and Amrinder Singh's Congress is moreover, I would say, three and a half or four-way nature of the contest,
so
right?
then
So
let's
that
just
28, 30%, you could be close to a majority, whoever it is.
yeah, let's just show the results from last time. Basically, this is what the last time results were. Amrinder Singh at that time was with the Congress, and the Congress got about 38.6% of the vote. What is fascinating is what Jay said, that AAP got 23.8%. Congress actually lost its vote share, yet gained 31 seats because of the peculiarity of it being a three-way contest,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
And,
So, go on, Jay.
you see, therefore, uh, when there is such a clear desire for change, I mean, I'm not going by numbers, but I'm saying that when you go on the ground, people repeatedly say, we want to change, you're looking for an alternative. I think the race is more or less settled. One shouldn't speculate or talk of a hung house. I think it's fairly settled. Looking at that,
You are thinking that it's going to be Aam Aadmi Party.
pretty much it should pretty much be close to a majority. You
Yeah,
know,
because if I go to the 2012 results, right, which is basically there are three regions of Punjab, as we know, Majha, Doaba, and Malwa, right, and interestingly, the BJP's catchment area was parts of Majha, parts of Doaba, where they did a little bit well in certain urban seats, and then Malwa they had a few seats here and there, but Malwa was essentially Akali Dal, if I'm not mistaken, right?
yeah.
And this was how they used to contest: 94 seats for Akalis and 23 for BJP. Now, in 2007, BJP got 19 out of 23, which was like a ridiculous strike rate, which does not happen. I mean, they did very well. And in 2012, also, they got 12 out of 23, which is still a very good strike rate. So, along with the BJP and Akali Dal, they formed the government quite easily. Very unusual for Punjab. which used to have this very revolving door sort of situation. But then you come to 2017, there was anti-incumbency, and then Amrinder was the face of the Congress, and then Amrinder gets 38.6% of the vote, and then Amrinder gets 77 seats. But then Congress, being Congress, they shot themselves in the foot with the whole Sidhu fiasco. And last time, what is different is last time, I think, Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, there was almost a debate between who will be the
Yeah,
leader. Will it be Bhagwan Singh Maan, or will it be what's his name, HS Fulka? So
yeah,
now there are four sort of comparisons, and don't go by Wikipedia on this. I just go that because it's the easier way to show on seats. But basically, it's Channi for Congress, Maan for AAP, Sukhbir for SAD. Ashwini Kumar Sharma is BJP's leaders, but I think it's probably going to be. I mean, Amarinder is going to be the face. BJP is fighting on most seats in the alliance, but I don't think BJP is going to get as many seats, or that alliance is going to get as many seats to form the government. I mean, we could be surprised, and they could be like a spoiler in some seats, but you never know, right? I want to talk a little bit about you to explain this Badal and Bahujan Samaj Party alliance, right? Because
yeah.
you have the SAD, which has a base in Jat Sikhs, and the BSP, which the distribution of BSP is basically in the Dalit vote in Punjab. And if you look at the SAD BSP distribution, and I apologize to all our folks on SoundCloud, but I had to show this on YouTube. That's the only way of showing it. How do you view this distribution? Like, this
In
is the.
fact, the BSP has more or less taken what is the Dwaba region. I mean, pockets in Malwa, but more so the Dwaba region.
Hmm,
Verily, that is actually the Dalit majority area.
hmm,
Their state percentage is 32%, but
hmm,
in the Dwaba region, they are like anywhere in an assembly between 38 and 55% of
hmm,
that, right? So clearly, that belt or most of that belt has been given to the BSP,
hmm.
right? While
Yeah.
the rest, the Majha and the Malwa, has been taken up by the Akali. Now, there's a caveat here.
Hmm,
You see, electorally, the BSP has succeeded only once
hmm,
in Punjab, which is the
hmm,
1996 Lok Sabha election,
hmm,
where the Akalis also had an alliance with the BSP that time, and the alliance together won 11 out of the 13 Lok Sabha seats. The
hmm.
Akalis won 8, the BSP won 3.
Yeah.
After that, from 1997, the Akalis have consistently partnered the BJP.
Hmm,
The BSP used to have 6 to 8% of the vote. In the last election, it was down to something like 2%.
hmm.
So that actually is something like one really doesn't know how much value the BSP will add there. That's point number
Correct.
one.
Hmm,
Though it is one of the states where the Bahujan Samaj Party originated, it was one of the states where it kicked off in the beginning. They even
yeah.
had a Lok Sabha seat in 1991, 92. In that Lok Sabha election, they had a seat in Punjab.
And Kanchi Ram
Uh,
was a Punjabi himself.
Punjabi himself.
Yeah.
Now, the key is with a sort of, and I think this is a thing that most political parties need to focus on in the future, that there's something called a political economy. Okay. The sort of political economy that has kicked up in Delhi, the Aam Aadmi Party model, Haryana, parts of Western UP, parts of Haryana, Chandigarh.
Hmm,
The Aam Aadmi Party actually has an appeal to those voters who are traditionally the BSP voters.
hmm,
And now you also have the Congress with the Dalits.
hmm.
So I really don't know if BSP can command a loyal voter base. What value it can add to an alliance is clearly not known.
Yeah.
Clearly not known.
What is interesting is that Badals have promised that it will be a Dalit CM there. Now, what is fascinating is the Badals base is in the Jat votes, right? So, will the Jat votes unite around the Akali Dal, saying even though they have done an alliance with BSP, or will that have a other, like a sideways effect? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here.
You see, traditionally that vote used to keep switching between the Congress and the Akali Dal.
Correct. Huh?
It's not that, so even Amrinder Singh had an appeal to those voters.
Hmm,
Now, what I am reading,
hmm,
there's an overarching sense of change.
hmm,
Okay, and that's where people for once
hmm,
are willing to look beyond their traditional choices. It's like saying that, in 2014,
Hmm.
most of India looked beyond their traditional choice and voted for the BJP.
Hmm.
Like in Uttar Pradesh, okay, many of the castes and communities that were traditionally non-aligned to the BJP or aligned somewhere else,
Yeah.
that नहीं एक बार तो इनको वोट देना है, right? तो वो एक बार इनको वोट देना है is something that I'm reading and hearing about. Therefore, I'm not sure if Jat Sikh is equal to Akali Dal. Even that equation holds. It's going to loosen up a little bit,
A little
right?
bit. Especially after
And
Senior Badal is very old right now, right? I mean, he's
very, very
90.
good. Very good.
Yeah.
Second thing, this Dalit CM pitch. I do not know how much water it holds.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, just to digress to another state for a minute, even Mr. KCR, I'm told, I mean, this is hearsay, I'm not sure about this, but allegedly had said, before the formation of Telangana state, that the Dalits would be the CM of Telangana.
Deputy CM, I think.
Yeah,
Deputy CM बोला था ना कि CM बोला था. I forget.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about
Yeah.
that. Maybe you can correct me. It would be
हाँ.
deputy. But see, these pitches are made doesn't mean they are the most overarching and appealing pitches.
Hmm.
You know, people have their own criteria by which they vote. People have their own inducements before the election by which they vote. So I'm really not sure if that holds water.
True. Absolutely. So fascinating. So then, basically, this is the situation, right? And then, where does this put the BJP Captain Alliance, right? Are they going to be a spoiler in a few seats, or are they going to spring a surprise to the Akalis or something?
I think the biggest beneficiary of that alliance is the BJP itself.
That's
For
what
the
I think.
first time, it's got an opportunity to contest so many seats in Punjab. I mean, so many places where there would have been no lotus for decades and decades in an election. Now suddenly there's going to be a lotus,
Yeah.
right?
And Amrinder is a fairly popular leader.
Fairly popular, and so this is going to be in a way the first independent trial of BJP's base, which it never had for so many years. That's point number one. The point number two, though there are several misgivings about the regime of Mr. Amrinder Singh, right? There is yet a certain section of voters that he appeals to,
Hmm.
right? So I do see them polling in votes, polling in quite a few seats, but clearly it's like something like for Mr. Amrinder Singh, it could be a sunset election. But for BJP, this could be the sunrise election. You
Wow.
know, they may not win as many seats, but they might just secure a foundation. One thing, which people are again not talking a lot about is the first time BJP is openly wooing new Sikh leaders as entrants and putting them in places of prominence,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
right? So, I mean, Mr. Navjot Singh Sidhu and his wife originally, I mean, they had their debut in Punjab through the BJP,
He was
right?
supposed to be the Sikh face of BJP in Punjab.
Punjab. So I pretty much think the BJP, though it may not score much, they may not be expecting themselves to score much,
Hmm.
but they're looking at something like, hey, can we just get the maiden innings going, yeah,
Mhm.
and then might be they're looking at a long run, and I think therefore it's sunset election for Mr. Amrinder Singh, but sunrise election for the BJP.
That's probably the best statement to sort of describe the situation. It's also because Amarinder wanted to prove a point that he still got it, right? Because I mean, he's a very proud man, and I mean this in a very complimentary way. That he's a very, I mean, और उसकी self respect की कांग्रेस ने धज्जियां उड़ा दी थी with the whole Sidhu Chennai situation. I mean, it was handled disastrously well. I'm not saying that Amrinder would have won you the election, but Congress had a chance in a three-way fight with the Aam Aadmi Party also being a factor. But as everything that Rahul Gandhi touches, it has to burst up in the air. I mean, I don't know what he was trying to do. And then Captain had this funny interview to I think London Top or something where Sidhu said he said कि Sidhu is an unstable man. Because he said कि मैं एक घंटा ये करता हूँ एक घंटा वो करता हूँ, right? And then he's made so many U-turns, right? So can we say that it is effectively the end of Navjot Singh Sidhu's career in Punjab?
See, politics is a game of waiting.
Hmm.
You know? And sometimes uh, waiting for a long time to win the confidence enough of the people as well as the leaders. I'll give a very interesting example which comes to my mind.
Hmm.
I go back to an old deceased but respected leader, Mrs. Sheila Dikshit.
Hmm.
When the Congress split, and I'm talking of 1995, when they formed the Tiwari Congress. Okay.
Hmm.
That is when Arjun Singh, N.D. Tiwari, and others walked out. Mrs. Sheila Dikshit was a part of that, and that Congress bombed at the polls in 1996. They got 4 Lok Sabha seats,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And then somehow they struggled for survival.
Hmm.
Willy nilly in 1997, they made a comeback. They merged into the Congress. Mrs. Dikshit was brought into the Congress, given, though she belonged to Uttar Pradesh, as an accommodation, she was given Delhi Pradesh Congress Committee. Anyway, there was nobody to head it.
Hmm.
And in 1998, all the onions made the BJP weep, right? And the BJP lost Delhi. And Mrs. Dikshit became the chief minister, and then she had a glorious 15 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
politics is a game of chance and waiting.
Yeah.
And I think that is where Mr. Sidhu has got it wrong. He
And
should not have jumped ship. Yeah.
absolutely. That's honestly, if the BJP had actually broken with Akalis that they did, then Sidhu would
Yeah.
have actually been the BJP face for this election.
Absolutely. I mean, they're desperate to have a face. This was the most, I mean, who do you think would have been a better counter to, an existing quasi cine star comedian like Bhagwant Maan,
Yeah.
vis-a-vis a ready to shoot anytime Mr.
No, no,
Sidhu with
but it
his.
would be perfect now because when Bhagwant Mann rose to prominence with the Great Indian Laughter Challenge, Navjot Sidhu was
Yeah,
the judge.
absolutely. So
So
they
that
would
would have
have been perfect counterparts. So
been
this
perfect
would
with
have
each other.
Yeah. So if the BJP going with a larger share of seats this time would have actually been Mr. Sidhu's true tryst with destiny. You know that he's the leader of the party in the large alliance, large party in a bigger alliance. But now, he's now the thing is, if the Congress, as the larger probabilities,
Hmm.
comes second,
Hmm. Hmm.
then again, now either he's state president or he's leader of opposition, again has to wait. It's rather always pragmatic in politics to stick to a party, be patient, ensure you have networks inside and outside the party, and then you rise to prominence.
Exactly. So, but वो भी मुझे तो I mean I find that very doubtful because अगर वो होगा कि नहीं because I think the patience, right? Channi has the patience that Sidhu does not, and the issue with Sidhu is even now I don't know if he would have liked the setup. Actually, if he had the sort of the Durandeshi, to for the want of a better word, to see कि
Yeah,
अगर ये election में if he was the BJP face और हार भी गया तो no one would
yeah,
have blamed him because BJP really has no base in Punjab. But
yeah,
अगर जीत गया तो it would have been his credit. But खैर, he's gone, and I don't think he's ever coming back in the BJP because I mean, although things have taught me in politics, never say never. But I just don't think there's too much bad blood now for him to
yeah,
come
yeah,
back.
yeah. No, but no, and you see, in BJP,
Hmm.
the comebacks have never had a great ride after coming back. Be it
That
Kalyan Singh, be it Uma Bharti, the comebacks have always had it like, okay, now there's a nice retirement sinecure, you got something, be happy.
exactly, exactly. So you can get governorship at best, but
Yeah, yeah,
you won't get political power.
yeah. That's a far cry. That's a far cry.
It's a good point. But just to wrap up Punjab here, and go, are we expected to see any last minute surprises? Because I think Punjab votes in 2 days. I think very soon. Or what do you think?
Uh, Adit, I will not say last minute surprise. In psephology, there's something that you call the bullwhip effect and the underdog effect.
Hmm,
So in
hmm,
a bullwhip, the winner gets more.
hmm,
In an underdog, the loser tends to lose more. You know,
hmm.
I somehow started getting a feeling that this can even become a bullwhip election, because what happens is, as the trend becomes more and more clear before the election,
Hmm, hmm,
even the fence sitters tend to go towards the winner.
hmm. Or those, yeah, prospective winner, yeah.
Yeah, so I perhaps am seeing some phenomenon like that. If there's a surprise, it might be on the higher side of numbers.
Oh wow. Okay. So that's revealing. So it'll be fascinating. We'll do a post Punjab sort of wrap up, post election wrap up. So that will probably sort of encompass all the issues. But now from the state that will vote in 1.5 day to a state that voted 2.5 3 days ago, or a few, I forget when exactly did they vote. Pardon my sort of dates. This thing, but basically, sorry, they
It's
voted
about 5 days ago.
फाइव
About
डेज
five
ago,
days
5 days ago. ये टाइम डिफरेंस में मेरे दिन सारे मिल जाते हैं. What is fascinating is they voted on the same day or one day ahead. Uttarakhand voted on 15th February in 2017. This time they voted on 14th February. So very very close sort of thing.
It was Valentine's Day.
Absolutely. अभी देखते हैं कि who will feel the love on Valentine's Day. But these are the sort of combinations for Uttarakhand. You have BJP, which is being led by Mr. Pushkar Singh Dhami, Harish Rawat, and Ajay Kochiyal, who's leading the Aam Aadmi Party, right? And then there is another sort of formation in Uttarakhand where you have the Uttarakhand Kranti Dal, Bahujan Samaj Party with little bit of that. Now, BSP in Uttarakhand has had a little bit of a base because, of course, it was part of Uttar Pradesh pehle, and then it became Uttaranchal after becoming Uttarakhand. And BSP had about 7 8 seats for a very consistent time. Last election was the first election where it did not win a single seat, but that does not mean that they won't this time. And then there is also Uttarakhand Kranti Dal, which always had 1 2 3 4 seats, something like that. So that is those are the regions basically Uttarakhand. Now Uttarakhand has traditionally, the Dehradun, Haridwar, they're all sort of urban to semi-urban things, and then you have the pure Pahadi districts, the Pauri Garhwal and Almoda, Nainital, things like that. So the distribution is sort of mixed up in who wins what where. Um, Traditionally, this has been a state which has been very close. So I want us to go through a little bit of numbers here. So if we go to the 2017 numbers, if we look, it was a very actually. Let me start with 2007 because that's a good benchmark to start with. 2007, the BJP won. The BJP had an alliance with Uttarakhand Kranti Dal and then independence after the election. BJP got 35 seats and they
It's
got
a
three.
post-poll alliance.
Yeah. So
Look
I
at
think
the vote share difference, Aadit, that election. It's about less than 2%, 1%, something.
yeah,
Very,
and
very narrow.
BSP getting close to 12% vote share, which is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the interesting part. Now you go to 2012, which is probably a dream election for psephologists and wannabe psephologists, right, Jay? I mean, this is crazy. Congress gets 32, BJP gets 31. Everyone has written off BJP before the elections, but literally, Colonel BC Khanduri comes and does a Houdini act and
Yeah.
tries to get BJP out of the loss. The only difference is the 1 seat difference between Congress and BJP is the seat of Mr.
Khanduri
Khanduri
himself.
himself. I mean, it is unbelievable. So had
Yeah.
BJP won that seat, they would have had a post poll alliance with probably the Independents and the Uttarakhand Kranti Dal again, and they would have
Yeah.
actually formed the government.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
and here is the fascinating part, Jay. So BSP only got 3 seats, but their vote share actually went up to over 12 and 12% in that election.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was a bizarre. Now then, since that election, Mr. Vijay Bahuguna has joined the BJP. Harish Rawat became the CM. But then, riding on the post Modi wave, 2014 Modi wave, the BJP swept to power in Uttarakhand in an election which Uttarakhand hasn't seen in years, where they got a swing of 13.3%, and BJP got almost 47% of the votes, which doesn't usually happen, right? In the history of Uttarakhand, we've never seen such margins.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I
Uh,
think I see what happened in the last election is
hmm, hmm,
parties like the Uttarakhand Kranti Dal and the Bahujan Samaj Party.
Hmm.
They actually lost voters. They lost voters to the BJP,
Hmm.
and that, in a way, if you look at the Congress, the swing against the Congress is very marginal. It is minus 0.3%.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it is all these voters consolidating in favor of the BJP just produce a huge swing.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
now see a different problem for the BJP,
Hmm.
which is a continual change of chief ministers tends to give a negative image first.
Hmm. Hmm.
I've been going through a lot of the press.
Yeah.
Three BJP candidates have complained that the party worked against them,
Oh.
right? So, this is a sign of nervousness,
Hmm.
right? When your own people come up and say, this so and so person worked against me, the party has plotted to defeat me,
Hmm. Hmm.
it's a sign of nervousness.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
I personally feel that Uttarakhand is close to call as ever.
Hmm.
however, there is a distinct possibility that the BJP might still have a slight edge because the huge gap that it has from last time. The
Hmm.
13-14% is a huge gap,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? So slight edge could be for the BJP. Yeah. However, it can be an election like 2012. Khanduri hai zaruri, lekin harna bhi hai zaruri. Something like that. So,
So okay, it's an interesting point, right? Because here is my sort of issue with Uttarakhand. Not issue really. The biggest issue is that Uttarakhand is a very minor election in terms of seat margins, right? कि आपके 2000 3000 5000 से वोट होता है because the seat capacity. So it's a very fascinating state because not only does it have the Pahadi population, it has a lot of ex-servicemen population and stuff. And Uttarakhand is distinctly voted differently in Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha, where Lok Sabha usually it is never given a 3-2 mandate. It's always 4-1 or 5-0. Like it's been a complete one way. So I mean it. You almost feel like a lot of ex-government servants also there. So it is completely divided on the local and the national issues. And the local population of Uttarakhand actually has a grouse. Ki agar if you have a lot of sort of Delhi folks and army folks retiring in Uttarakhand and voting on different issues than what, and I'm not blaming them. Everyone has their own issues to vote in the election. So the local issues are the local issues getting neglected when it comes to representation in the Lok Sabha, right? Are we only electing the leaders who are there? And उससे क्या होता है कि when that happens, you and I both know the elections almost become like a municipal election where literally it is about bijli sadak pani. Now, when that
Adit, one of my most prominent polling experiences
happens,
is that when we go and ask people
hmm,
which is your most prominent issue for the election, and this
hmm,
has been my experience across elections, across states, across regions,
hmm,
the first thing that most voters will come up with is drainage. The drainage doesn't work.
hmm.
Most
As
common.
as a civil engineer, I wholeheartedly agree with their concern.
Yeah, and so that is what elections turn out to be. Now, if you look at the same thing for Uttarakhand, I can tell you, it's ironical how dysfunctional the Indian state is.
Hmm,
Uh, Issues don't change. You feel you're reading newspapers of a different era. I'll tell
hmm,
you what I mean. So in 2008, we were doing the selection of Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, and Rajasthan. I was particularly focused on Chhattisgarh.
hmm,
So they said, भैया एक issue है that the elephant comes and spoils, messes up with the standing crop. खड़ी फसल खराब करते हैं हाथी.
hmm, hmm,
So hathi was an issue.
hmm,
Okay, in parts of northern Chhattisgarh which border Jharkhand,
hmm,
so Jashpur and all that. But hathi is an issue, the animal. Uttarakhand, I think in 2007 I read about monkeys spoiling crops.
hmm,
Even in this election, I'm still reading about monkeys. Now
hmm,
I'm also reading about bears.
hmm,
You know, and they're saying, now all the environmentalists really need to watch out. They're saying the population of leopards has increased and they're coming home. So somehow it's actually turning out to be that local election where drainage is going to be replaced by animals, bears, and leopards.
hmm, hmm.
Yeah. So I personally think if there's one reason Uttarakhand could actually swing, is though the vote share difference is huge, the assembly constituencies are so small that the switchable margins are like 3,000 and 5,000 votes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, if there is a reason it could still swing, it could be because of those margins, or
That's
again the rise of some very prominent local candidates, with some concerns. I think 2017 was a very unique election in one way. It was after demonetization,
right.
and I'll tell you why it was unique.
Hmm.
In the immediate aftermath of demonetization, it was actually looked upon by several voters in India as a sweet revenge on the rich.
Hmm.
Okay, and many of them voted lock, stock, and barrel for the BJP. If you just look at the growth of the BJP,
Hmm.
2016 polls in Bengal, the BJP is not done well. It's just won 3 assembly seats.
Hmm.
But in Bengal and Odisha, in every single bypoll after demonetization, the BJP has done very well.
Hmm.
So, according to me, I see this as a demonetization foundation, the demonetization flash in the pan, whatever you want to call it, that
Hmm.
happened in Uttarakhand as well.
Yeah.
19 was all about voting for a leader, right? So
Yeah.
16 and 19 were in 17 and 19 were in a way some wave response elections. This might perhaps be finally a non-wave response election after two elections that were mostly waves, right? So
Yeah.
you could actually see a different reaction here again.
Yeah, because you had. I mean, let's take Dehradun for example, right? I mean, Dehradun BJP has generally done quite well, but last time it was an absolute sweep because not only did they win, I think Dehradun has probably about 9 seats or 10 seats. They won 9 out of 10, and they
Yeah.
won almost, I would say, 7 or 8 of those nine by double-digit margins. Some by close to 20% margins. I mean, and some like by like 30% plus margins. So
Yeah.
it was very unusual for
Yeah, these are
Uttarakhand.
absolutely unusual margins. They're not always sustainable.
Hmm.
Yeah. And the other factors, as I said, that was a consolidation post Notbandi.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
19 was a wave for Mr. Modi,
Yeah,
right?
like. Hmm.
This is neither a Notbandi nor a Modi election,
Hmm.
right? So I would see maybe even the margins narrowing down quite a bit.
Yeah, like I'll give you an example of Dehradun cantonment. A very BJP, say Harbans Kapoor won by 5,000 votes in 2012. A tough seat, no doubt. He repeated the same seat by I think 14,000 or 50, thing, 16,600 votes in that. I mean, there are so many. Raipur again, Umesh Sharma, cow won by 37,000 margins, right? Abhi 37,000 to shayad 36,000 votes to total number of votes को winner for winner होता है in Uttarakhand seats because there are so small seats and he actually wins the seats by 36,700 sort of votes. So there are so many seats like that.
I'm losing.
Sorry,
Adit, I'm losing you. Okay.
sorry, you were saying, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. No, I just lost you for the last 30 seconds. I just lost you for the last 30 seconds.
No, no, I was saying,
There
I
was a
was saying,
lot of disturbance on the
yeah,
screen.
I was saying Umesh Sharma wins his seats by close to 36,000 votes. 36,000, 37,000 is the total number of votes that a winner sometimes gets in Haridwar. Harbans Kapoor wins his seat by
Yeah.
5,000 votes in 2012 and then repeats it by 17,000 votes close to in 2017. So you have like some,
Yeah.
you have some very uh, insanely high margins. And what is interesting is
Yeah.
that even though BSP got only 7% of the vote in the Haridwar area, it did have two or three areas where BSP was runner up. Now BSP's vote is very concentrated in Uttarakhand in two or three districts
Yeah.
basically. Right. So
Yeah.
if BSP again manages to poll the same amount of vote, then who knows what may happen. So let me ask you a very nasty thing, Jay. Do you think the vote percentage of BSP is going to be higher in Uttarakhand than Uttar Pradesh?
No. 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 No.
what
That's
if
not.
it, what if it gets 12% in Uttarakhand and 11% in Uttar Pradesh?
No.
I
No. That
mean,
won't happen. No.
who knows
The
though?
collapse. The collapse will be uniform.
Yeah, the collapse will be uniform, you think?
Yeah.
But what is crazy is in 2012, when this election was taking place 10 years ago, Mayawati was in power in Uttar Pradesh. had 12% vote share in Uttarakhand and had a significant vote share in Punjab.
Hmm.
10 years
Yeah,
later,
yeah,
Mayawati is nowhere in contention in Uttar Pradesh. I mean, we don't even know when she started campaigning. She is
yeah,
nowhere like close to getting even 3 seats in Uttarakhand that she did in 2012.
yeah.
एक time पे तो 8 सीट आती थी और पंजाब में they are now in alliance with Akali Dal. I mean, it is the most insane turnaround for ostensibly the same formations between the Akali Dal and Congress and BSP opposed and came to power or came to national reckoning with, they have formed an alliance with the same formation.
So you see, the BSP is suffering the same fate as most identity politics-based parties in India suffer. See, it's
Hmm,
not unique. I mean, this phenomenon.
hmm, hmm,
You look at the PMK in Tamil Nadu, Patali
hmm,
Makal Kachi.
hmm,
First big strike at power is 1998 when they become a part of Vajpayee's NDA at the center.
hmm, hmm, hmm,
1999, again a part of the NDA, the local Dravidian party changes, but PMK remains, comes to power. 2004, they make a wise choice. They go with the UPA as a pre-poll. Again, they come to power. This time, there are more ministers than ever before.
hmm, hmm.
And 2009 is their end.
Yeah,
So glory is 11 years.
11.
After that, it's all decline, 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 decline.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So the thing is, an identity politics based party, however it gets glorified by the intellectuals, by the academia, by a section of the media, what it fails to introspect is what is its next agenda going to be
Hmm,
after they've answered the identity question,
yeah.
right? I think that's where the BSP failed completely.
And
Uh,
what,
so
and sorry, go on. Yeah.
So I rather, uh, there has to be a larger economic agenda as well. Now,
Hmm,
however much you say that Akhilesh represents just the farmers, just the OBCs, whatever, but there is some economic agenda, whatever, some sugarcane mill, something, something. There has to be some larger economic agenda.
hmm.
Without that, I don't think it's easy for a party to sail through solely based on identity politics.
Absolutely. So PMK is a very interesting combination. They used to have 20 MLAs in 2001 when they were with
Yeah,
Jai Mrug. Then they were down to
yeah,
18. They were still in government because they were with Karunanidhi. Then they
yeah,
were down to three in 2011. That's the only time they repeated their alliance. So they
yeah,
went back to NDA. Now 2021, they finally have 5 seats in the assembly because Anna DMK, the NDA actually did better in Tamil Nadu than what many thought. But
yeah,
interestingly, their votes from they got about close to 22.4 lakh votes in 99, and their number of votes have actually gone down, which is
yeah,
ridiculous because if you think about it, the number of voters have gone up. So even if they
yeah.
maintain their percent, it should theoretically go up. They only
Go.
bettered the 1999 number in 2019, but they lost the I think Dharmapuri seat, if
Yeah,
I'm not mistaken.
yeah,
That
yeah. They lost that soul seat, Dharmapuri. Yeah,
Dharmapuri. So Anubhamani Ram.
Anubhamani Ramdas, the son
I
of
think
Mr. Ram.
he's in the Rajya Sabha, if I'm not,
Yes,
yeah, he's in
yes,
the Rajya Sabha. But I mean, I honestly don't know if what will happen. What is interesting is in Tamil Nadu and I know we are taking a little digression, but because this is when Jay and I are talking, this is what will happen, guys. We will take digression into states. In Tamil Nadu, what's interesting is it actually had went to Tamil Nadu urban polls happened today, actually, while we are recording, and the BJP under Mr. K Annamalai now is actually posing quite a bit of a headache to the DMK government. So you never know what might happen because they finally have found a leader which is local and which is not really who does not seem to be wanting to come eventually to Delhi as a Lok Sabha guy and be a minister there.
I think a couple of things.
Hmm,
I've just observed a couple of his interviews. I've not gone down to Tamil Nadu.
hmm,
However, what I've seen is after long, the BJP has a leader who can speak in a focused way.
hmm,
Yeah.
hmm, hmm,
Second, has an image that appeals to the young people.
hmm,
Yeah.
hmm,
And third, represents or at least seems to represent some sort of a change.
hmm,
Right now, this is not earlier the case with the earlier state presidents that the BJP had. Many of them look like handpicks of Delhi.
Hmm.
Many of them looked singularly incompetent, who were
Hmm.
there only because they needed a person for the post.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right?
Exactly.
The other important factor you have to observe is that the BJP won Coimbatore in the assembly polls. Vanati Srinivasan actually defeated Kamala Hassan,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
right? So the party has already put in some groundwork to create an urban presence,
Hmm.
right? So in that way, the party is there to put up a fight.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if they can really upset the DMK a lot.
Hmm.
However, one thing is very clear is that it's found a toehold, a hard toehold for itself,
Hmm.
much similar to what it used to do in Orissa and Bengal in the 90s.
Hmm.
Somehow win two assembly seats, somehow win three, somehow win four,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? So
Exactly.
that's the state the BJP is in, and it is seen as a fighting force.
Yeah.
Even the fact that from a neighboring small Tamilian union territory, which is Puducherry,
Hmm.
they've got a Rajya Sabha MP elected,
Hmm.
right? So they're
Hmm.
working on all forms of messaging,
Hmm.
right? So
No,
I
not
think that to its effect, yeah,
no, no, not just that. And I don't think they won a Lok Sabha seat because Kanyakumari is very, very. Now it's become a very difficult seat for BJP to win. Typically, they won in 2014, but that usually happened when Jayalalitha propped up a candidate and ensured that some vote split from the DMK and things like that. When it's straight NDA versus DMK, it's just become because of the demographics and the way the seat has been carved out. But
right,
Coimbatore, like you said, Dharmapuri, there are a few seats
yeah,
that BJP can actually cause a lot of Mr. I forget H Raja's seat that he won as a not H Raja, I'm sorry, I think Nainar Nagendran, I'm sorry, he won,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
H Raja's seat is of course Shivaganga, which is
Shivagan, yeah,
which is the whole Chidambaram family seat.
yeah,
But I don't know how that will work. But there are many sorts. Ramanagaram is another seat, right, where
yeah,
BJP can actually spring surprise. So there are about 3 or 4 Lok Sabha seats where BJP, if they actually form correct sort of
right.
and coupled with some anti-incumbency, they can score at least 4 to 5 Lok Sabha seats in Tamil Nadu quite easily.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, it's now all up to their groundwork. I
Hmm.
think they've got the toehold.
Yeah,
Uh, and the party has made it clear to the people that it is there for a fight.
then for a fight, absolutely.
Now, how the people respond, how long it takes for the party to go is a matter of question.
Yeah, remains to be seen. But chalo, before we digress, now we have to wrap up with Uttar Pradesh, the big fight. What do you think, Jay? 2 phases are over. Many more to go. We have about more than 3 or 4 weeks. I think 3 weeks before the results. So,
Yeah.
what do you think? What are you seeing? What are the trends you're seeing?
I see my 2019, I this time not done a poll. 2019 polling experience was very much a learning experience
Hmm.
for us. We realized that all the communities that are not voluble in public discourse,
Mhm.
like so they're not as voluble as the Yadavs or the Jatabs, they're there somewhere down, you know,
Hmm.
that all moved lock, stock, and barrel to the BJP.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
that is what caused even the fabled SP-BSP alliance to, come a cropper when everybody thought that they were actually going to sweep the state.
Yeah.
Right?
Chemistry trumped mathematics.
No, and the BJP's own mathematics created a chemistry of its own. you
Yes.
know that
Yeah.
that the fact that all these other smaller communities could be put together and the welfare state could weave them into one seamless network and they would deliver for the BJP, that actually happened,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I actually believe that the BJP could be putting up a very tough fight on the ground.
Hmm.
Much, some might want to think that the opposition is going to do well,
Mhm.
but I believe the BJP could be putting up a tough fight on the ground. However, again, as I say, that
Mhm.
finally after identity economics prevails.
Hmm.
And that applies to Uttar Pradesh as well. So we really don't know if the price of the Ujjwala cylinder, the price of the fertilizer versus the 2,000 rupees in the bank account, what is mattering more? I think those are questions really which this election will answer for us.
Yeah.
So that's what we need.
and they come from such a high base, right? BJP got 300 seats, right? So even if they lose 70 seats, right, which might seem a
Yeah.
lot, they still form the government comfortably,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. That's true. The starting point for the BJP is much higher than the starting point for the SP.
which we would never imagine saying that in 2012, right? 10 years ago,
Yeah.
BJP got 47 seats.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Very true. Very true. Very true.
But so you
Right
think
now, the starting point is much different.
you think that this is the end of the road for Mayawati as a national leader, and she'll remain a fringe player after this?
Yeah, I more or less think she would remain a French player.
Yeah,
Uh, very few regional parties. I mean, I'm sorry to say that the BSP is a national party, but now sort of truncated to a regional one.
yeah.
Very few of them have actually been able to grow beyond the leader and
Uh,
beyond the maiden state. It's not easy.
and for people who, like a lot of our young listeners who may not know why we are calling BSP used to be a national party, because they used to have MLAs in UP, in Madhya Pradesh, which they might
Yeah.
still, but in Madhya Pradesh, in Punjab, in I think in
Chhattisgarh,
Chhattisgarh, I think in Haryana too, uh,
Haryana, yes.
and Uttarakhand. So that is seven
Mhm.
states they had MLAs, and I am sure we are missing out one or two states where they may have won elections somewhere, because the BSP had become.
Karnataka, single MLA, Maharashtra, once upon a time, single MLA, all that they have had.
हाँ नहीं, बट वो तो मैं गिनता नहीं हूँ, क्योंकि वो क्या होता था कि वन एमएलए वन।
Rajasthan.
राजस्थान,
Every time
राजस्थान
they
में
win and four or five go away to the Congress.
कांग्रेस, हाँ। तो वो वहां पे तो वो होता है, कर्नाटका में तो देयर इज वन वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग एमएलए, कभी वो समाजवादी पार्टी में भी चला गया था एक बार, आई थिंक मिस्टर बंगारप्पा, इफ आई एम नॉट मिस्टेकन, ही हैड गॉन टू द
Yes, yes,
समाजवादी
yes, yes,
पार्टी,
yes,
सो
yes.
हाँ, सो इट इज कर्नाटका इज very interesting in that way, that it has one or two leaders who come from the completely, like Samajwadi Party had this one leader in Bengal called Mr. Kiran Nanda, और मुझे याद है
Huh.
he is the only one like who would like do like full page ads about how Samajwadi Party is expanding beyond UP. It never, I think, it never, I think, even went south of Sefai, but that is a whole that is a
Yeah,
discussion
yeah,
for later part. But that, and BSP का क्या हुआ था? It actually very smartly so gained, right? So you had BSP in the Bundelkhand region, which was his Gad in UP, and then it
yeah.
also, because it was bordering Madhya Pradesh, it gained in Madhya Pradesh. So then
Hmm.
Western UP, because he had a base, it cascaded over to Punjab, to Haryana, to Uttarakhand.
Punjab was always a base, and
Hmm.
from there, Western UP and Punjab, it picked up Haryana.
हाँ,
In
correct.
1990, in 2008, BSP had almost 15% vote in Delhi, the Delhi Assembly election.
That is insane.
Yeah, yeah.
So let me ask you this, Jay, as a closing comment for about, I mean, what BSP did with the Dalit vote, right? Is Mr. Kejriwal hoping to be that person for the urban vote? Is he trying to do that? Like trying to fight like a lot of city seats and hoping कि कुछ शायद आम आदमी पार्टी को लग जाए, because आप is fighting in Goa, in Uttarakhand, where frankly it does not have a chance, right? It does have a chance in Punjab, in Delhi is of course the I mean it's in power, and it looks very likely that it might retain power whenever the Delhi elections happen. So do you think Mr. Kejriwal might opt for that sort of attempt? I mean, he may fail. I'm just wondering.
You see, whenever a new political party grows,
Hmm,
it starts where support is easiest to collect.
hmm,
That is invariably an urban area.
hmm,
Because the voter there is free from economic linkages and rural agricultural come economic linkages to some local leader. He's always open to change, he's always flexible, he's always looking for a change,
hmm, hmm,
right? So the BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Sangh also grew first from the urban areas.
hmm,
Congress was also called urban and Savarno ki Jamaat,
hmm,
right? So, I mean, very naturally, even that will be the first target area for for the Aam Aadmi Party to grow.
hmm,
So it will be looking to states with a higher per capita income, more literate population, more urban population to create its first, boroughs outside Delhi,
hmm, hmm, hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
yeah, you'll be able to see them in some pockets of Uttarakhand. You will see them in pockets of Himachal.
Hmm.
You will
अभी तो
see them
खैर,
in Goa, and
हाँ
you
अभी
will see them in pockets of Gujarat.
They're trying very hard in Gujarat. I don't know if they'll work or not. If, of course, if Aam Aadmi Party even gets 3-4% of the vote, it will help the BJP. So I don't know how the Congress is going to do that, because it is not going to take away a lot of the BJP vote. In urban pockets, it will
Right,
probably take away the Congress vote. So
right, right.
who knows? And that probably could be. There are some seats in Ahmedabad and Surat that Congress, anyways, doesn't have a chance. It would do well to give those to Aam Aadmi Party to just see कि उनसे ज्यादा औकात है कि नहीं आपकी. But
No, no, no.
we'll see.
You know, I tell you, what you said might just be the doomsday prophecy.
Hmm,
If by chance there's a hung assembly in Punjab,
hmm,
you know, it will cement an AAP Congress relationship across. In
you
Delhi, they
think?
have finished the Congress, reduced it to some 5% of the vote. Now it has no
Hmm,
choice but to go for an alliance. There's no point contesting separately,
hmm,
right? With
hmm,
5% of the votes.
hmm.
I don't know. A couple of these next assembly elections could just be accelerators of some alliances.
But I'll tell you this though. I think Akalis are might be more likely to ally than AAP and Congress. Don't you think?
I see it quite differently. I believe the AAP has grown by nibbling the natural base of the Congress. It's a natural ally.
Hmm, interesting. I mean, could be.
They have
I'm
nibbled,
just.
they have actually nibbled completely. If you look at the Delhi elections,
Hmm,
almost the Bharatiya Janasangh type of vote share is constant with the BJP.
hmm, hmm.
If there's any party which has become a casualty because of AAP, it is the Congress.
It's the Congress, correct? Hmm, correct.
Right? So I believe that's a natural nibbling territory for them, and therefore, in the long run, even a natural alliance territory.
Yeah, and Delhi is I hate to use the terms left or right or whatever, but Delhi is the first right of center state in India, because it's the first state that actually ditched the Congress very early in the 60s and moved towards the Bharatiya Jansangh. And till from 1967 to present, the Jansangh or the BJP has been consistently present in Delhi, have not gone a smidgen below 30 to 32%, even in its absolute lowest, right? And even now, when Arvind Kejriwal sweeps the 2015 poll, BJP comes to back in 2019 with 7 Lok Sabha seats. So Delhi almost has made up its mind कि आपको अगर विधानसभा में वोट देंगे तो बीजेपी को लोकसभा में देंगे. So
Yeah.
it is a perfect sort of dichotomy that they have, and this happened in 1999 also, when Sheila Dikshit comes to power in 1998 in Delhi as the CM. A
Yeah.
year or 6 months later, BJP wins all 7 Lok Sabha seats in Delhi.
All seven Lok Sabha. Manmohan Singh loses South Delhi.
हाँ, मनमोहन सिंह यूज टू विजय कुमार मल्होत्रा, इफ आई एम नॉट मिस्टेकन.
Yes.
सो
Yes.
या, और तब क्या था, बीजेपी के लीडर्स भी थे ना, साहिब सिंह वर्मा,
Yeah.
विजय कुमार मल्होत्रा, साहनी, you
Yeah.
and BJP still controls MCD after all these years. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a very interesting sort of scenario. But to wrap up this podcast, what Jai said is very fascinating. Ki, Uttarakhand, UP, and Punjab. Let's see how this works. We're going to do a follow up podcast after the elections on Jai, but then we'll also do one on a book that Jai has actually helped quite research quite a bit, and Jai and I have been talking about Nalin Mehta's book on the BJP. So stay tuned for that also. We'll do a. I'm announcing that because kabhi na kabhi to hoga. I'm not saying it'll happen next week, but we'll schedule one very soon for that. But Jai, before you go, any recommendations you have for our viewers, listeners to watch, listen to anything,
Oh,
or read?
I think these days there's a lot of innovative content on YouTube.
Hmm,
A lot of it that small media outlets are doing is really commendable. I mean, they
hmm,
really put people on the ground. They've got a lot of in-depth coverage,
hmm.
uh, and I mean, I feel a little sorry to say, but I really don't watch a lot of television these days, and I don't miss it. I think the digital content quite substitutes for it.
Mm,
So,
absolutely, I agree with you. As someone who's in the digital space, I not only endorse this, I completely agree with this comment, and probably like add my own thing about behind it. But yeah, that's true. A lot of digital spaces, and what doesn't matter whatever side of the ideological spectrum you are on, listen to it, because numbers don't lie, data does not lie, right? Opinions, they can be twisted, or that can be
yeah.
kite flying done on that. My recommendation is going to be a couple of things. There is there is a show, sort of a documentary going on. I haven't watched it yet, about Boeing and the things on Netflix that just came out. I want to sort of watch that. And then if you are interested in election analysis and things like that, I would recommend basically watching all these videos for sure, and also going through a couple of phenomenally well written books on the subject. One happens to be and on Punjab. The reason I say this is a very important book to read, is Miss Amritsar, Mrs. Gandhi's Last Battle, because that not only talks about the whole Khalistan movement and Blue Star and things like that. It actually starts with saying that how this actually emanated in electoral calculations, and how that led to security implications on the history of Punjab. Second, my recommendation would be, like we said, Nalin's book on the BJP, about how why the BJP does. And the third recommendation that I have on the what you may call, on this understanding elections, is a book which I agree in parts with, I disagree in parts with. It's called Behenji by Ajoy Bose on Mayawati. Now, the reason is, read it to know about Mayawati's rise to politics, and then sort of pause where she gets to power, and then do research on what has happened in the last 15 years. And you'll see a very, very interesting sort of trajectory for Mayawati. So, let us know what you think about it. Like I always say, you'll never know what you agree or disagree with till you read stuff you disagree with. So read those things. Let us know where you agree or disagree with them, and come back to my podcast to listen for more, and give us your feedback. Tell Ajay, thank you very much. It's been
Thank
great to
you.
have you. Always a fun discussion. And fellas, we'll see you next week with more discussion. Keep follow us on you subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Till then, keep writing, keep outraging. We want to see you. Don't outrage too much, also, but we want to see your opinions. Thank you, guys, and